Hi, this is Mike Steinell. I had a number of people at a recent clinic ask me to send them copies, PDFs, of the three parts of the 401 bar rhythms. So I've prepared this little movie, I guess you'd call it, to offer some tips on how to use these sheets. It's important to remember that this is just one part of how to develop better sight reading, and that sight reading, even though we do it as one thing, there are certain discrete skills which really are important and can be isolated and worked on separately. The first skill is just being able to look at a note and push down the right button. The next thing is being able to move the eye ahead so that you can be playing and thinking about and processing the next thing to do. And that's a skill. Some people are better at it out of the chute, but it can be improved. The third thing is being able to keep your place in the bar, in particular so that if you make a mistake, you can get back on. That's one of the big problems. Also, rest reading, being able to read the rest correctly. But this particular little movie, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be about the ability to recognize the common half-bar and one-bar rhythms in jazz music. In 4/4 time, which is the most common key signature in jazz, there are only 20 distinct half-bar rhythms that use quarters, quarter rests, eighths, and eighth rests. Just 20. And some of those 20 actually sound the same as others in that group, but are written differently or look differently. But that's it, just 20. And what I've done is just combine those with all the mathematical combinations that are possible. For example, you see group 1 here is rhythm number 1 with rhythm number 1. And then the next bar is rhythm number 1 and rhythm number 2. And then rhythm number 1 and rhythm number 3 until you get down to 20. And you can see that down there are ways that the first half of the bar changes. For example, group 2 is, I believe, rhythm number 2 and rhythm number 1. And then rhythm number 2 and rhythm number 2. So you see the idea, just the mathematical possibilities. These rhythms, as they're written, are random enough so that a student can't memorize them or learn them by rote. And just most of our students and most of us, when we're actually performing music, are not reading it. Even if we're looking at music, we're taking the notation, we're using the notation to remind us of what the music should sound like, and then we're relying on our memory of the music. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we don't practice just reading rhythms, then when we're faced with new music, it's really puts a lot of stress on it. We just don't have a mechanism ready to go to recognize rhythms and repeat them without having to think about it. So that's why these sheets are good. Now, one of the wrinkles is what happens to these rhythms when ties are added. So the basic underlying rhythm can still be felt, and the ties can be interpreted. So I've got 2 more packets. One with 400 one-bar jazz rhythms with ties within the bar, like you see here, and one with 400 one-bar rhythms with ties between the bars. That's a whole nother thing, being able to feel the basic rhythm underneath without articulating a start to a new rhythm. But the key is that first group, learning to recognize those 20 basic rhythms in the different combinations that might be possible. If I was to go ahead with this, I would actually begin to include triplets, which are tricky, and that would make the possibilities even more. There would be quite a few more possibilities. And 16th notes, but you really don't have to worry about 16ths, because 16ths can be just doubled up of the quarter and eighth note rhythms. Okay, so once you have your students working on these, what I suggest is not start in the same place every day. Start with a different group so they don't get used to memorizing. And you can let everybody play unison on one note and have people quit when they make a mistake and kind of make it a contest. Once the rhythms are pretty much ingrained, then you can add a new thing to your brain, which is to change notes. And I would start with first just picking two notes like do and re of a scale, and no repeated notes, but just go back and forth with the different rhythms. And then maybe three notes, do, re, mi, 5 notes, and eventually a whole scale. With the first group, that might sound like this. Then perhaps go to something like the first 3 notes of a particular scale. Paying attention to not repeat at the top of the scale, but just to continue and go back down. You could jump ahead to 4 notes if you wish, or right to 5 notes. I got a little off there, and your students will also. So here I'm starting again. Then we could go to a 7-note scale, from do to do, not repeating any notes. Eventually, you could do harder and harder scales, exotic scales, melodic minor, harmonic minor. And like I say, don't start with group 1 every day. Start with a different group. If your students are familiar with triads and 7th chords or 9th chords, you could try the same rhythms with a particular chord arpeggiation. Once again, the rule would be not to repeat any notes. Here is group number 1 using a concert B-flat major 7th. You can change it up as much as your imagination will let you. Have fun with it. I hope this helps, and I hope these rhythms help your students learn to read a little better. This is Mike Steinel. If you have questions, don't hesitate to email me at mike.steinel@unt.edu or visit my website, mikesteinel.com. to learn more about my music and my books. Thank you.